Hey guys, welcome to Transformations. So just I just want to let you guys know that Transformations itself, it's not animation. It's more like a tool that you use for animations. You take an HTML element and you alter the physical properties, say its shape, the rotation, the position, the angle, etc. So how I'd like to start is to create our environment. So I'm already in my CSS Animations folder, but I'm going to make a new one. So let's call it CSS Animations Tutorial. Great. Okay, now I'm going to create an index.html and a style.css file. Great, it's all in there. And now I'm just going to open it up in my code editor. Great. So I'm just going to create two screens here. Here's my Google Chrome browser. Everything I'm going to make is going to be seen on the browser. So let's start by making our HTML. I got Emmet extension, so boom, that makes my life a lot easier. Okay, now I'm going to call this CSS. Okay, now inside of my body, I'm going to make a div element. Nothing needs to be in there at the moment. As long as I have a div element, we're cool. And I'm also going to link to my style sheet. I'm going to say style sheet. I'm going to have a type, text, CSS, and href style.css. All right, let's save that. And now I'm going to give my elements some CSS rules. Okay, I'm going to give it some flex properties. Okay. You know what? I almost forgot something. I do want something in here. I would like an H1 tag. Says something very classic. Okay. So the justified content makes sure everything's in the center, and the line items makes everything that is inside the div element center. Okay, I'm going to make a square, so I feel very purple today, so I'm going to add some purple colors. Okay, and a background color, plum. border, 5 pixels, solid. I got another purple color here. And we got a margin of 200 pixels. That's just going to make sure everything is in the center on my screen. Okay, I'm going to save that. Hopefully everything goes well. Now, I also have an extension, a live server extension. So when I click go live, we should do exactly that. I'm going to now. Yay, we got a square. Now, the first thing I'd like you to know about transformations is that transformation, it's going to be a property called transform. And basically, I'll tell you about prefixes in a second. VS Code's trying to help me. But transform basically takes a function, and the function takes a value. Now, I'm going to teach you about a couple functions. There's, actually I'll put it up here. There's translate, there's rotate, there's scale, skew, scale, don't do that. No, I'm going to comment this out now. Scale, skew, and for right now, I'm going to put in matrix. So translate is a function where your element moves up and down on the screen. Not as an animation just yet, but if I transform it, translate being my function, and I give it, let's say, 100 pixels this way. Sorry, it's right here. And I save it, and it moves 100 pixels to the right. Now, translate in this circumstance takes an x coordinate and a second value, a y coordinate. So if I did this, I know we sort of missed it there, but it not only went to the right, it also went down. So one thing I want to show you about x and y coordinates in CSS, right here. Usually when you go positive in y coordinates, you go higher. But in CSS, when you go positive, you go down, which is different. It takes a while for some of us to remember, for me to remember it anyways. So if I wanted to go negative 100 pixels in the y coordinate, I would go up. So here, this little fishy, or submarine, is translating 200 pixels in the x coordinate and negative 25 pixels in the y coordinate. So notice it moves right 200 pixels and it moves up negative 25 pixels. So that's what I wanted to get across. wrong one, sorry. Now translate also has translate X, translate Y, which it does what exactly you think it does. It just takes the X coordinate, but also, what do you think happens if I do this? If you notice, it didn't follow the translate X. It only followed translate Y. It didn't go right, it just went down. I'd say I'm teaching you this because you don't want to put two transform properties in an element. Because of cascading style sheets, it's gonna follow the rule, follow the property that is the farthest down. So it's just gonna ignore translate X, which is why if we want to translate X and Y, we just do translate. And the first, if you only put one argument inside of translate, it's just gonna call it X. It's not gonna go go 300 in the X axis and 300 in the Y axis. It's just gonna follow its first argument X. So, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make this a little easier to see. I'm going to do a hover. I'm gonna put my transform properties in there so it's easier to see the difference, the change. I'm gonna delete that. Oh, by the way, prefixes, they're there so older browsers can understand the CSS3 properties. They're rather, CSS3 is comparatively new to some older browsers. So if I did transform onto Internet Explorer 3 or whatnot, Grandma won't be able to see these awesome animations. So that's why we have prefixes. This is for Chrome, I think, Mozilla, Firefox. I think this is Internet Explorer and Opera. So now that we have this, and I'm going to save this real quick. So if I hover, woo, you know what? I know why I did that. But you can see that it's moving in a different direction. So I want you to ignore this just a little bit. This is just so no one gets an epileptic shock. I'm going to put a transition property. I'll teach you that about it in a second. I'm going to put a form 2 seconds. Okay, so now when we hover, whoop. So yeah, it's going 300 pixels. It's translating 300 pixels to the right. So I think we're all funned out with translate. Let's go on to the next one, rotate. So rotate is a function that does exactly what you think it does. Why did it do that? It rotates. And this takes, instead of pixels like the last one, it takes a degree. So I'm gonna try, let's do 30 degrees. DEG, degree. Now, when I hover over it, it's gonna go 30 degrees clockwise. So when you do a positive number degree, 30 degrees positive, it's going to go clockwise. But if I do negative, Command C, it's going to go counterclockwise. There we go. We also have rotate X and rotate Y. Now this is a little funny. Now watch this with me. So rotate X 30 degrees. When I hover it, now it looks like it's getting shorter, but if I do 90 degrees, you might see it better. It's disappearing. What it's really doing, it's staying in it's rotating in its own x-axis. It's not moving right or left. It's just rotating within its x-axis. So it's kind of doing a flip, like a back flip, like that. And if I do Y instead, whoop, now it looks like it's getting thinner, but it's actually just staying in its own y-axis. It's rotating in its own y-axis. If you like imagine a piece of paper just turning around, that's what it's like. Now if I do something crazy, like 180, it's going to go all the way around. And you see it's in the back, it's backwards. Let's try that again. Whoop. And what the heck? Let's do 360. You know what? No, let's do negative 360. Something crazy. So it flips all the way around. Whoop. See the cool things you can do with transformations. Now, let's do scale. Scale is basically just making your element larger or smaller. And with scale, you just put in a number, no degrees, no pixels, just a number. If I do 1 and I hover over it, it just stays the same size. Now, if I do 2 and I hover over it, it doubles in size. Crazy. If you do a negative, it's probably, in this case, it's just going to disappear. But you can also use X and Y with this as well. If I do scale X 2, what do you think is going to happen? It's just going to get wider because its x-axis is going to get wider. If you do Y, same idea, but for its y-axis, it gets taller. That's scale. Now let's do skew. Skew is a little funny. Skew looks like it's just stretching out in different angles. I'll explain that in 1 second. Let's start off with X for right now. I believe it's in degrees. So skew X 10 degrees. Notice, see how it's kind of literally skewing? It's being stretched in different angles. Let me do 20 just so it's more noticeable. So when you do X, it's skewing widthways. It's skewing along the x-axis, while you do skew Y, okay, it's kind of getting taller. It's skewing on the y-axis. Now, if I do just skew, like in translate, it takes 2 arguments. You do 20 degrees both ways. So it's going to stretch the x-axis 20 degrees and the y-axis 20 degrees. So it's going to stretch widthways and it's going to go a little taller. So when I hover over it, whoop, crazy. It's kind of a cool effect. Now, the last thing I'm going to show is matrix. Now, this is our shorthand. Now, I don't know who wrote this, but it is in the books and you can't change it. So, what's going to be here in this order, in the value inside of matrix, going to take 6 values. It's going to start with scale X, skew Y, and I'm going to comment this out before, good job. Yeah, okay, now I'm going to comment this out before Visual Studio Code starts to help me again. So skew Y, skew X, scale Y. I'm just going to do trans right now, but transition X and transition Y. So those are the 6 values that go into matrix. It's our shorthand instead of doing every single one separately. But notice that it doesn't take rotation. So I'll show you how to do that in just a moment, but just so you know this. So, let's try this. We're gonna scale twice. That's the X way, so that's width ways. We're gonna skew it. Now skew, it doesn't take degrees, it takes decimals. It's gonna, instead of 10 degrees, it's gonna be 0.1 degrees. So 0.1. Same with skew X, but I'm gonna do 0.2 this time. Scale Y, let's do 2 as well. And we're going to move it 200 pixels both ways, x-axis and y-axis. So 200. And notice that you don't have to put pixels or degrees or anything like that. They already know what values are where. So I'm going to save this. Now, I actually don't know what's going to happen when I hover over this, so you're going to know with me. So when I hover, whoa! So yeah, it does all that stuff. So notice how it's scaling 2 times width and height. What else is it? Skewing like 10 degrees and 10 degrees in the y-axis, 20 degrees in the x-axis, and yeah. Now, if you really wanted to rotate, what you would have to do instead is basically put every single function inside of transform and separate it with a space. So, let's try this. Let's scale 2 again. Translate pixels. And rotate. We haven't done 90 degrees yet. Let's try that. All right. So I'm going to save that. When I hover over it, look, it's the same exact thing. Sweet. All right. So that is all I have on transformations. Please join me next time on transitions, where we actually get to animate stuff. Actually, sort of lying. You're animating now, but now I'll actually teach you what transition is and what these properties do. See you later.